Welcome back to the Money Wisdom Podcast, powered by Johnson Brunetti. As always, I'm Jake Dozer, and joining me is Nick Colantuono, both certified financial planners and financial advisors on the team here at Johnson Brunetti in Connecticut and Massachusetts, respectively. And we're here with another Money Wisdom question in our series we're doing here. The question is this from one of our listeners: how much should I worry about how my retirement savings compare to other people my age? I realize that every situation is different, but should I be concerned if I don't have a comparable amount in retirement savings compared to other people I know? I totally understand the spirit of this question. While everyone recognizes that comparison is truly the thief of joy, at the same time, what other barometer do you have except to compare and see how you're doing compared to maybe colleagues around the water cooler or family or friends, or maybe an aunt or an uncle or a mom or dad who retired before you? Here's what I would like to ask Nick. What are your starting thoughts around how should somebody be thinking about that and quantifying that in their situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. And frankly, it's hard for people not to compare. It's hard for me not to compare myself to my peers. But at the end of the day, you have to realize no two situations are alike. And when it comes down to it, I'm always encouraging the clients that we're talking to and the folks we're working with, you need to focus on the things that you can actually control. And at the end of the day, you really only have control over your own situation. And some would argue you don't even have control over that. But, it's hard if you're approaching retirement, yet you see your friend who is 5 years younger than you and they're retiring today. Well, who knows? Maybe they had a terrible situation occur, like a parent pass away and leave them a whole bunch of money. So you don't know the driving forces behind their circumstances. Maybe they were forced to retire, right? Their job was taken away from them. So they're in a position where they just have to make retirement a reality. Meanwhile, they would probably be happier in your position, continuing to work, continuing to save. So again, it's a touchy subject. I'm aware of that. You're aware of that as well, Jake. And like you said, comparison is certainly the thief of joy. So focusing on what you can control is really critical.
Yeah. And I think that, and furthermore, I've heard it said once, not to be too philosophical, but if everyone sat around a table and put their burdens down on a table, we'd probably end up picking up our own. We wouldn't pick up the others. And so to Nick's point, you could have somebody who has a giant net worth because they're a business owner, but all of their equity is tied up in a business. And they're asking themselves, keeping themselves up at night, how am I going to sell this business for what it's worth? Or how am I going to not just one day close shop and take 3 decades of business experience and not find somebody who perceives value in this? And now this whole behemoth thing that I should be proud of that I built, how am I going to unwind this thing? Or another person similarly who has a bunch of real estate, and maybe it was the catalyst that let them retire early because of rental income, but they're fretting as they get older in years, not wanting to have to take care of it and wanting the job that burden is. Maybe you're a person who has a tremendous pension because you work for a city, municipality, state, federal government, and maybe your pension is heavy, so you've got great cash flow. But if you had an emergency, there's not a lot of money in your retirement account as a lump sum withdrawal. Everybody's situation is different. And so I think that when you're thinking about those things, you have to determine, number one, the most important priority in retirement is, am I going to have enough monthly income to meet my expense needs, to satiate my lifestyle in retirement? Leaving a legacy is wonderful. Having investments that grow are wonderful. But at the end of the day, if those things aren't facilitating monthly withdrawals that support your lifestyle, they don't mean anything. An investment is only as good as the goal that it achieves. And so to that end, an investment could have a great rate of return, but it's so volatile that you cannot have predictable income payments off of it. And that's the exclusive scope of your portfolio. Well, you're certainly not in a great place. So I think it always goes back to doing individual retirement planning, at the heart of which needs to be an income plan. How are you going to take the money you've saved and convert it to a sustainable income stream that'll last you a lifetime? If that question cannot be answered, well, then there's really no other pieces that need to be addressed until that core issue is is focused upon.
Are you ready to retire with confidence? Join us for our retirement planning workshop and learn strategies to maximize Social Security, healthcare, income planning, taxation, and more. Text workshop to 800-757-0436 to reserve your spot, or click the link in this week's show for more details on how to register.
So Nick, we've talked about making sure that you're not comparing yourself amongst others to the extent that it's unhealthy. We talked about making sure that we start first with a plan and understanding that an income plan is the core of a retirement plan. What other things do people need to be aware of when we're thinking about the timing of retirement and their readiness for that next stage of life?
It's not just a financial decision, right? There are so many different emotions that go into it when you enter a phase of life that is unlike anything you've ever experienced or been in before. And, there's just clearly, there's a lot of decisions to be made, not only just losing your paycheck, but now how do you replace that? And not only, not getting up and, getting dressed and going to work every day, but how do you now start living off of what you work so hard to accumulate? There's things like Medicare, you've got to make decisions around, pensions, Social Security, things you have to make decisions around. So obviously there's a lot that goes into this. And that's where, as financial planners, it's very hard to answer that question of, how am I doing? I mean, you really have to take all these different things into account. So typically it always just starts with that conversation. Make sure what you have worked so hard to accumulate is obviously going to keep working as hard for you as you've worked for it. But now we need to align the objectives that you have in this next phase of life with what you've saved. It's no longer just about growing that money as much as possible. But when we look at a year like the one where we just had, and the market's up 24, 25%, you also don't want to feel like you're missing out on that. So different buckets doing different things. This obviously goes in line with our philosophy as a firm when it comes to managing risk, yet not taking more risk than you have to. And
right.
It's all a balancing act, as you know. And for many folks, it just starts with that initial conversation.
Yes, that's exactly right. And we welcome anyone and all to reach out. Feel free to send us a message, give us a call. We'd be happy to have you at one of our events, have you have a conversation with one of our advisors in a complimentary capacity. Regardless of how it is, recognizing that first you have to determine what's the lifestyle going to look like in retirement. How do I plan to that end? Regardless of if comprised of pensions and light investments, or maybe a lot of investments and little pensions, or a combination thereof and anything in between. Your situation needs to be unique to you, and therefore your plan should be the same. Thanks again for tuning into the Money Wisdom Podcast powered by Johnson Bernetti. I'm Jake Dozer, joined as always by Nick Colantuono, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. If you like this content, be sure to give it a like on the platform that you listened or watched it at. Be sure to share it with someone else or subscribe so you don't miss the content. We'll see you next time.
Investment advisory services offered through JB Capital LLC. Insurance products offered through JN Financial LLC.